Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time, we're going to be tackling a question that I think a lot of people
Okay.
might not even realize is a question, and that is, what does the Bible actually say about God's form?
Oh,
We're going to be using some excerpts from God's form, examining biblical manifestations,
all right.
and I think you might be surprised at some of the things that we find.
Yeah, I think people have a lot of assumptions about this topic going in.
Right, and so the big assumption that a lot of people make
Yeah.
is that God is formless, right?
Uh,
God is spirit, and that's kind of the end of it.
right. Yeah.
But this source that we're looking at, it really kind of dives right into some interesting stuff
Yeah.
right from the beginning.
Okay.
And one of the first things that it brings up is Genesis 1.26,
Okay.
which says, let us make man in our image, in our likeness.
Right.
So what are we to make of that?
Well, that's one of those passages that has been debated for centuries. I think one way to look at it is that it's not necessarily saying that God has a physical form
Okay.
like we do with arms and legs and a head,
Right.
but rather that we were created to reflect certain attributes of God.
Okay.
Things like our capacity for reason and morality
Yeah.
and creativity. Those are all things that set us apart from the rest of creation.
That's really interesting. So it's more like we were created to be like God in a way, not look like God.
Exactly. Yeah. And some scholars also point to our relational nature,
Oh, okay.
our ability to love and connect with others.
Uh-huh.
And they see that as a reflection of the Trinity,
Gotcha.
the idea that God is a community of persons in perfect relationship.
Wow. That's so cool. I never thought about it that way before. But okay, so that's one way to look at it. But then the source goes on to talk about some other passages where God seems to be interacting with the world
Okay.
in a more like physical way.
Yeah.
Like in Genesis 3.8, where it says that God was walking in the garden in the cool of the day.
Right.
Or Genesis 18.1 to 4, where God appears to Abraham
Mm-hmm.
and like sits down and has a meal with him.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting
Yeah.
because it seems like in those passages, God is taking on a physical form.
Yeah, I mean, that's like pretty explicit, right?
It is. And, some people might say, well, those are just metaphors
Okay.
or symbolic language. But I think it's important to remember that the Bible uses lots of different types of language.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it uses very concrete imagery
Right.
to describe something that's ultimately beyond our comprehension.
That makes sense. So how do we reconcile these two ideas? The idea that God is spirit and the idea that God can manifest in a physical form?
Well, I think it comes down to understanding that God is both transcendent and
Oh.
immanent, meaning that God is both beyond our understanding and also present in the world.
Okay.
And so I think it's possible that God can choose to reveal God's self to us in ways that we can perceive